Okay, good evening, everybody. We'll get started. There are sheets up front. So welcome to, today is August 20th, 2018. It's the 8th and final Dine and Learn of the summer. Thank you again to Moshe Holzer for arranging this every night. Even when he's not here, he arranges it. If anyone wants to sponsor tonight, please contact Moshe. We don't have a sponsor yet for tonight. And I guess thank you to Mechi's Gourmet, the unofficial caterer of the summer's Dine and Learn. So I wanted to finish up by talking about the subject of who can be a rabbi, because actually it got a little complicated. It's always complicated. We don't necessarily like to admit it. It used to be smicha you got personally from a rabbi, but over the past 200 years things have become more institutional. You get smicha very often from a yeshiva. And what sometimes those are called is a smicha factory. Because basically if you finish the program, they give you smicha. So there's after the Black Plague in Germany, so it goes back many centuries. So there was a problem of rabbis who were not fully. A lot of the really great rabbis, the big Talmidei Chachamim, died. So other people rose to take their place. And there was a problem of rabbis who didn't know what they were doing, officiating at weddings. So they made an official takana. Not only was smicha enough to do a wedding, you had to have a second tier called morenu. And this is quoted in the Shulchan Aruch. You have to be morenu in order to officiate at a wedding, because they had a problem of rabbis who were unqualified. And there was a story told of Rav Moshe Soloveitchik. He was the Rosh Yeshiva in Warsaw of the Tach Kamoni Yeshiva, which was a bit of a more modern type yeshiva, a little Mizrahi, that secular studies, and they had a smicha program. So Rav Moshe Soloveitchik, he was the father of Rabbi Ber, he made his way to New York to be a Rosh Yeshiva at YU. So how did that happen? He was in Warsaw. Why would he leave Europe? He was a Rosh Yeshiva in the yeshiva, and the story, as I've heard it, was that after the smicha program finished, right after the first graduating class, so the head of the school said, was a big Talmid Chacham himself, he said, okay, now give smicha to everybody. And Rav Moshe Soloveitchik said, that's not how it works. They have to pass my test. And the head of the institution said, no, that's not how it works. They finished the program. We give them smicha. So that was an irresolvable conflict. And around that time, the Rosh Yeshiva in YU, the Meitcheter Ilui, so he was nifter. And Rav... Rav Shimon Shkop. Shimon Shkop was here in America, and he was serving as the temporary Rosh Yeshiva, but he was being called back to Poland. So they needed someone else another Talmud of Reb Chaim. Meitcheter Ilui was, according to some, the biggest Talmud of Reb Chaim Soloveitchik. Rav Shimon Shkop was certainly a big one. So they called Reb Chaim's son to come over. So he had no jobs, or a job he wasn't happy with, so he came over here, and that's how he became the Rosh Yeshiva at what is now called YU. It was around the time they were starting the college. I think Reb Shimon Shkop actually gave shir at YU the year they started the college. I don't know if he approved or not. That's irrelevant. He was the temporary Rosh Yeshiva at that point. Be that as it may, smicha factories, not everyone was so happy with. And that same, the tkufa, the era that we're talking about in Sephardic time, in Egypt in the 1500s, there was a problem as well of similar nature. And even more than that, the Balabatim had figured it out. So what they were doing, what was common in those days, was if you had some sort of business conflict, you needed a bezdin to solve it. So what you would do is you would find some young rabbis who were a bit naive and inexperienced, put them on the bezdin so you can influence them and get the conclusion that you want. And this leading rabbis realized this was going on, and they wanted to stop it. So what they did is, what was done in the old days was they issued a cherem. There was a list of rabbis who signed the cherem, and the cherem was, you're only allowed to use on a din Torah the rabbis who are signed to this cherem, or someone that they formally appoint. If you use anyone else, it's not a good din Torah, and plus you're in cherem, you can't get an aliyah and shul. So in Sfas at the time, the Mabit and the Beis Yosef were the two big rabbonim. It was mid-1500s. They were the two big rabbis in Sfas, and the Mabit was upset as well, and he went even further. He signed on the cherem in Egypt, and then he issued his own cherem, that no one under the age of 40 was allowed to paskin, period. Solves the problem. But the Beis Yosef said, Rav Yosef Karo, he said, what about my students? I have students who are under 40, they're big Talmidei Chachamim, I give them smicha. They're not allowed to serve as a rabbi. So the Mabit said, well, it's not me, it's a Gemara. So if you look at source number 1, it's a Gemara in the Avodah Zarah, Daf Yates Amud Beis. Amar Rabbi Abba, Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rav. Okay, my dichsiv ki rabim chalalim hipila. So it's a pasuk in Mishlei that many victims were felled. This refers to zet tamid shelo higia lahara umara. Someone, a Talmid Chacham, or a student who is not yet qualified to paskin, he just doesn't know enough, but he paskins anyway. That is terrible. It's not allowed to happen, and he is causing many averos to happen. And then the end of the pasuk, v'atzumim kol harugeh, and many victims were killed. So who is this? Zet tamid shigia lahara ve'eno mora. If you are a Talmid Chacham and you are qualified to paskin and you refuse, so that's also causing people to do the wrong thing. So that's also bad. So continues the Gemara, ve'ad kama, until when? Arbaim shanim, 40 years. Oh, so then that's a kasha. V'ha Rava was a descendant of Eli HaKohen, and there was a curse placed on the descendants of Eli HaKohen that they shouldn't live long lives, and Rava died at the age of 40. Rava, we have a lot of halachas from him, so obviously he paskined under the age of 40. So how could he do that? V'ha Rava Ori. So no Hasam b'Shavin. No, there he was equal. So some machlokas Rashi tells us what it means. According to Rashi, if you're equal or greater, so you can paskin under the age of 40. If you're equal or greater than other Talmid Chachamim in the area, even if you're under the age of 40, you can paskin. According to Tosfos, it's the other way around. The Isser applies only if you're 40 or above, and therefore the nafkamina is if you're at the age of 40. But basically, as long as you're great, unusual Talmid Chacham, you could paskin even under the age of 40. And that's what Rava was. He was unique in his generation. So it says in Mabit, it's not me, it's the Gemara. The Gemara says you're not allowed to paskin unless if you're under the age of 40. So the Beit Yosef was still unhappy, and he sent shilohs around to the Mediterranean, the big Gedolim in the Mediterranean area, and he wrote his own tshuva as well. So we'll just focus on the Maharshdam. The Maharshdam we've discussed a lot this summer. He was in Salonika, and he answered as follows. He says there are 3 types of Talmidei Chachamim, 3 types of rabbis. There's a rabbi who was unfit to paskin. He has a certificate. He passed whatever test he did. He photocopied the notes, and he was able to get. What do they call a medical student who passes the boards at a 65 exactly, or whatever the passing grade is? You call him doctor. It's the same thing as a rabbi. He just squeaked by, and he got smicha, but he's not really fit to paskin a shaila, so he is not allowed to paskin. That's the beginning of the Gemara. That's Talmid Shelo Yilo Ra. So that's one. You're unfit. You're not allowed to paskin. Then there's a huge Talmid Chacham who's completely fit. He is entirely fit. He is obligated to paskin. And then you have the regular Talmid Chacham who's gaining experience, and he learned all the text and he knows the stuff. But first he has to get experience and understand things better. So he is allowed to paskin, but he's not obligated. He can say, you know what? I'm not 100% sure on this sugya. Go to someone else. He's allowed to. So the Maharshdam says, what does the age of 40 have to do? The age of 40 is that not if you're not higia lahara, if you're unfit. It doesn't matter what age you are. You could be 95, you're still not allowed to paskin. You could be 70. If you don't know it, you can't paskin. If you do know it really, really well, you're completely fit, you're always obligated. It doesn't matter if you're 18. Remember, we discussed Maharibe Rav. He was appointed a rabbi in Fez in Morocco at the age of 18. If you really know your stuff, you're obligated to paskin no matter what. But if you're mediocre, if you're average, so then wait till you're 40, and after 40, that's when the obligation kicks in. Until 40 is optional, after that it's obligatory. Therefore, he says, Mabit is wrong, and you don't have to follow this cherem. But he goes even one step further, yeah.
So the Mabit was paskening only after the age of 40? He probably started much earlier than that.
I don't know. It's an interesting question. We'd have to look at the dates on his chuvas and compare it to his birth year. I don't know. It's a good question. So the Maharshdam goes a step further, and he says none of this really applies nowadays anyway, Because nowadays, all the halachas are written. We have the Rambam's Mishnah Torah, we have the Rif, we have the Rush, we have the Tur. So if you're paskening something that's written in a sefer, you're not really paskening. The sefer is paskening. And the sefer is over the age of 40, whatever. I mean, whoever wrote the sefer is qualified, completely qualified, so then it's not a problem for you at all. And he says, I'm not even saying that, said the Maharstam. The Maharami Rotenberg, the Russia's Rabbi from centuries before, he said it already. But he had a problem, because the Maharik, who was a Rav in Italy earlier, so he disagreed. He said, if you look in all the poskim until now, nobody says that's everything's changed once it's written down. Nobody says that. So it's a nice svara. Maharami Rotenberg had a nice svara. Nobody says that. So we can't follow that. So the Maharshtam has two answers to him. First answer is source number 2. It's a Gemara in Eruvin of Samach Beis Amud Beis. Amalei Rabbi Yaakov bar Abba Labaye. So there's an issue. You're not allowed to paskin a shayla in front of your Rebbe, in your Rebbe's area. So Kigon Megillas Tanis. So Megillas Tanis, right? It was a scroll. It was written down. Diksiva Umancha. It's written. It's established. It's published. Mahu lo ruye ba'asrei de Rabbi. Can I paskin something that's written in Megillas Tanis in the city where my Rebbe is, or does that violate the prohibition of paskining in front of my Rebbe? So Amar Le, Hacha Amar Rabbi Yosef. So he says, no, this is what Rabbi Yosef says. Afilu biyasa bekuscha. Even an egg falls in milk. Is it kosher or is it not kosher? So we know it's kosher. It's obviously kosher. Everybody knows it's kosher. You're not allowed to even paskin that, something so obvious, in front of your Rebbe. Even if it's written, he's saying. Even if it's written, you can't paskin. So it says in Maharshtam, in those days, the halacha that an egg falls into milk is mutter was not even written. Everything, almost everything, was oral. And therefore they said, even if it's written, you can't paskin it because so much is oral. Says the Maharshtam, but nowadays it's the exact opposite. Almost everything is written. So the concern in the Gemara that you can't paskin something that's written because you might paskin something that's oral doesn't apply nowadays, because almost everything is written. That's his first response to the Maharik. Second is source 3. This is the way the Rambam says over the Gemara that we just learned. Read carefully. Listen carefully. So Mishnah Torah, Hilchos Talmud Torah, Parakei Halacha Daled. V'kol talmid shelo higia lahora umora. Any student who is not qualified in paskins, harei zerasha shota v'gas aruch. It's terrible. It's wicked. It's arrogant. V'alav ne'emar ki rabim chalalim hipila. Right, and he quotes the pasuk that the Gemara quotes. V'chein chacham shehigia lahora v'eino mora. And a Talmid Chacham who is qualified and doesn't paskin, harei zeh monei Torah. You're preventing other people from gaining Torah. V'nosen michsholo sifnei ivrim, and you're placing stumbling blocks before the blind by not telling them what's asur and what's mutter. V'alav ne'emar v'asumim kol harugeha, and that's what the pasuk says that we quoted above. Asumim kol harugeha. Elu hatamidim hakatanim shelo hirbu Torah karoi. So then the small Talmidim who aren't worthy, they don't know enough Torah, they want to become famous in front of the Amarasim, and the Kovsin v'yoshvin berosh ladin lahoras b'Yisrael, they jump forward, they want to paskin. What's missing from the Rambam? The age of 40. Doesn't mention it. It's in the Gemara. The Rambam doesn't mention it. Why not? It says the Maharshtam, because nowadays everything's written. The Rambam just wrote the entire, all the Torah Shabbat Peh, he wrote down, and therefore the age of 40 doesn't matter anymore. Doesn't matter whether you're below 40, over 40. If you're qualified, you can paskin. Says the Maharshtam, but you have to be qualified. You have to know what you're learning. You have to know what you're reading in the Rambam. Someone who doesn't know Aleph Beis and they read the Rambam, they can't paskin. You have to understand the context and the meaning. The Radbaz agrees with the Maharshtam. He sent a tshuva to the Beis Yosef, saying your students under the age of 40 are allowed to paskin. The Radbaz goes even further. He says you don't have to be a Talmid Chacham to paskin if it's literally black on white. If it's the exact same case, you take out the Mishnah Berurah, it's the exact same case. I forgot Yalav V'Yavo and Mincha. Do I have to repeat Mincha? It's in the Mishnah Berurah. So then you don't even have to be a rabbi. You don't need smicha to do that. If you're going to start making deductions, so then you do need smicha for that. So what the Radbaz and the Maharshtam and the Beis Yosef and the Mahari Kirkus all said was not only are the Talmidim under the age of 40, the rabbis, the smicha under the age of 40 allowed to paskin, You can ignore the cherem. Now, Mabit made a cherem, so if a cherem is made to strengthen an existing halacha that people aren't following, it's just reiterating what's in the halacha. So then it doesn't have to be unanimous. You can issue a cherem. Anyone can issue a cherem, because you're just strengthening the Torah itself. But if you're being machmir, you're adding an extra chumrah, so you need to get agreement from all the big rabbis in the neighborhood. You can't just make up a chumrah and thrust it on everyone and say anyone who doesn't follow it is in cherem. No one has the right to do that. You have to all agree. And in Tzfas, they didn't all agree. Therefore, the Mabit's cherem is not valid, and the Beis Yosef and his students could completely ignore it. So this was a case in those times of how they dealt with rabbis who weren't qualified. It was a struggle, because you don't want to prevent qualified rabbis from serving the community as well. So that's case number one. Now, case number two is probably the most famous case from that entire century that we've been discussing. We've alluded to it in the past, and this is how we're gonna end the summer on this famous case. So we've talked a bit about the Maharibe Rav, right? He grew up in Spain. He was exiled at the age of 17. Age of 18, he was appointed a rabbi in Fez, Morocco. He made his way to Egypt. He was appointed onto the Besdin of the Nagid. Then he made his way to Tzfas, and he was in Damascus at some point. And he got into a few skirmishes with the other rabbis, with, let's say, the Radbaz disagreeing strongly with him, and the Maharam al-Ashkar basically cursing him out, and others being unhappy with him. Okay, that was Maharibe Rav, very strong personality, genius among geniuses, unique in his generation, very bold, and that got him into conflict with some of the other rabbis. And we also discussed the Ralbach in Yerushalayim. The Ralbach, you recall, he was from Spain and he was in Portugal, that he and his father made their way to Istanbul, Constantinople, I think it was Istanbul at this time, and his father put together the Ein Yaakov, died before he finished, the Ralbach finished it. Then he made his way to Yerushalayim, where he was the gadol in Yerushalayim after Rav Ovadia Bartanura passed away. Okay, that's who we're talking about. So there's a general halacha as follows. Smicha, we know, was given from Moshe Rabbeinu to Yeshua, and then from generation to generation afterwards has to go from Rebbe to Talmud. Personal smicha. It almost disappeared in the times of the Mishnah. The Gemara talks about it here in source 4, Sanhedrin, Daf Yud Gimel Amud Beis to Yudalid Amud Aleph. Amar of Yehuda, Amar Rav, Baram Zocher, also Ish Latov, Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava Shemo. Blessed is the memory of Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. She'il Molehu Nishtakhu Dine Knasas Misrael. If not him, we would have forgotten the halachas of a knas, of a fine that a bestin gives. Nishtakhu, so nigrasinu. So you've forgotten? Why don't you just learn it? So no, Ela Badlu Dine Knasas Misrael. They would have been inapplicable. The fines that a bestin applies would have been inapplicable. How? Shepam Achas Gazra Machos HaRasha Gezeral Yisrael. The Romans issued a decree against the Jews, Shekol hasomech yehareg, v'kol hanismach yehareg. They said you're not allowed to give smicha. They realized you need rabbis to continue Judaism. They said anyone who gives smicha or receives smicha will be executed. Not only that, v'ir shesomchin ba, the city in which the smicha takes place, utchomen shesomchin bahem, and the entire area in which the smicha takes place, Ye'akru, Techarev, Ye'akru, they'll be destroyed. So Ma'asa Yehuda ben Bava, so what did he do? Halach ve'yashalo ben shnei harim gedolim. He found a place between two mountains that was not in any city, that was not in any tchum, so no innocent people, innocent civilians were at risk. Right? Uven shtei ayaros gedolos, uven shnei tchum be'shabbos, ben usha l'shefram, v'samach sham chamisha zakenim. He gave smicha to 5 rabbis. You know these names. Ve'elohein, Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Lazar ben Shamua. So those are the 5. Rav Avia Mosif after Rabbi Nechemia, he says there's even a 6th one there, Rabbi Nechemia. If not for Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, they would not have had smicha. The Mishnah would not have been completed. So Kevin Shikir. So then we don't have so much time, but the Gemara continues that he was mamash killed for that. Mamash killed for that in a horrible, horrible way. Because you need to have smicha, person to person, Rebbe to Talmud, and he wanted that to continue. But sometime in the time of the Gemara, it got lost, and we don't have that anymore. And that's when they established a calendar, which we have a standard calendar that goes on, because they knew without smicha, you can't do Kiddush HaChodesh, you can't establish a new month. So we lost the smicha. So what happens? How do we ever get it back? So the Rambam, right, so when Mashiach comes, he's going to return the Sanhedrin, but what's going to happen with the smicha? So the Rambam has a chiddush. The Rambam has a chiddush twice in his Perush Mishnayos, which he wrote when he was young, where he says that if all the Chachamim in Eretz Yisrael agree, they can give smicha to someone, and he is considered the same level of biblical smicha as if he got it from Moshe Rabbeinu, in that chain of tradition. And that's how you renew the smicha. It's a big chiddush. Okay. So comes Mahari Beirav after the Spanish expulsion, and he comes to Israel and says, let's do it. The Rambam said we could do it. Let's do it. And there was a chap to it also, because many Jews were forcibly converted to Christianity. So if you do avodah zarah voluntarily, and at some point in their lives they might have done it voluntarily, you're chayav kares. And the way to avoid kares, the Gemara says, you can only get one punishment. So if the Beis Din gives you malchus, you don't get kares anymore. So they'll get a little punishment at the Olam Hazeh. It'll hurt their back for maybe a month or 2 months, but in Olam Haba, they'll succeed. So he says, let's create this, and there are literally people who are saying, please give us malchus. We want malchus. So the Ma'aribe Rav wanted to do that. So what did he do? So he was the big Rav in Sfas. So he gathered together 25 of the biggest Talmidei Chachamim in Sfas, including Rav Yosef Kara, the Beis Yosef, the Shulchan Aruch. They tested him on Kol HaTorah Kula. He passed with flying colors because he was a huge genius. And they gave him smicha. And they said, you are now have biblical smicha. And then now he could give smicha to other people. So he gave to 4 people. He gave to the Beis Yosef. He gave to the Mabit. He gave to 2 other people. I'm not sure who. And then, this is where it gets a little controversial. He sends a messenger to Yerushalayim with a klaf, a smicha klaf, to the Rabbi, saying, I, Mahari Beirav, give you smicha. And the Rabbi said, you give me smicha? What's going on here? So then they exchanged a few heated letters, with the heat increasing with each letter. And the Rabbi says he had raised a number of objections. His first objection is the Rambam in the Mishnah Torah. That's source 5. Let's just read it because it gives a whole chiddush, and then we see where the problem arises. So, Harei shelo haya be'eretz Yisrael el somech echad. If there's only one person with smicha in Eretz Yisrael, so Moshiv Shnayim B'tzido, he could get 2 people to sit with him, right? So the Maribe Rav, he has smicha, no one else did, so it doesn't matter. He could get 2 people to sit with him. V'somech shivim ke'echad. He could give smicha to 70 people at once if he wants. Ozer achar zer, one after the other. V'achar kach yasehu v'ashivim Beis Din hagadol. So as long as one person has smicha, they can create a Sanhedrin. That's what the Rambam is telling us. Beis Din hagadol yismichu batei dinim acherim, and they can continue the chain going on forever. So nearing li hadvarim, now says the Rambam, my own opinion is shim hiskimu kol hachachamim sheberetz Yisrael limnos dayanim. So if all the chachamim in Israel agree to give to appoint judges v'lismoch osam and give them smicha, harei elu smuchim. It works. They're smuchim. V'yesh lehen ladon dinei knasos, and they could do fines. They could do dinei knasos. V'yesh lehen lismoch acherim. They could give smicha to other people. Im kain. So then, lama hayu hachachamim mitzarim ala smicha. So why did Rabbi Yehuda ben Vava accept upon himself this martyrdom? He was killed horribly by these Romans. Why did he allow that? Because they didn't want to live a life where a Beis Din can't give a knas. And they knew with the Romans in charge and forbidding smicha, if he lost it, it would take a long time for smicha to come back, and then he wouldn't have knasos for many years. So lefishi Yisrael mufuzar, because the Jews are spread out, v'efshe sheyaskimu kulan, and you can't get them all to agree. V'im hayasham samach mipi samach. But if you have one person with real smicha, nobody else has to agree. He can give knasos, he can give fines because he has smicha. But this idea needs to be clarified, needs to be decided. Those last 3 words changed everything. Because in the Perush Mishnayos, the Rambam never said that. The Rambam said it with confidence. Now the Rambam says, I'm not so sure. Let's discuss. Maybe this could work. So the Rabbi says, look, the Rambam changed his mind. He wasn't sure about it. You have no right to do it. But the truth is, what does V'hadavar tzarich echreya go on? This is a long halacha with many different details. And I've seen 7 different explanations of what V'hadavar tzarich echreya goes on. Does it go on the first halacha, the first part, the second part, the third part, the fourth part? But I have to admit, the Rabach's explanation seems pretty compelling. But the Mahari Rav responded, what are you talking about? The Rambam never retracted. You're misreading the Rambam. So the Rabach also said, but so who gave you smicha? You need a haskama. The Rambam says you need haskama from all the chachamim in Eretz Yisrael. You never asked me. I'm a chacham in Eretz Yisrael. I live in Yerushalayim. You never asked anyone in Yerushalayim, only in Sfas. And even though the Rambam says kol, and we understand rov means kol, the majority is fine. But that only applies if we have the opportunity to debate. We only follow the majority of poskim if they're able to offer proofs and not proof. Maybe if I was there, I would have convinced you and everyone else that you can't give smicha. Says the Ralbach, therefore it didn't work at all. You can't follow rov, you can't follow majority. The majority of Talmidei Chachamim were in Sfas, that's true. But you can't follow majority unless I'm there to argue. So the Mahari Rav responded, wait a minute, you're confusing 2 things here. There are 2 things going on. There's number 1, the halacha, do we follow the Rambam's chiddush? And that psak has to follow the halachas of psak. And the halacha of psak is, you only follow majority if they all have the opportunity to debate. But the rule of majority, following majority, isn't only in psak. Say you have 10 pieces of meat, 9 are kosher and 1 is not kosher. Do you say, well, we can't follow majority because the pieces of meat aren't debating each other? No, that doesn't make sense. It's the only rule in psak that the rabbis have to debate. But in every other place in the Torah, we follow the majority, period. So when it comes to giving smicha, does this person deserve smicha? So that's not psak. All you need is haskama. You just have to agree. So, okay, you don't agree, fine. But 25 rabbis in Sfas already agreed, and even more signed on after that. So there's no issue of debate. You don't have the right to debate. You could debate whether we follow the Rambam or not. Fine, that you could debate. But whether I have smicha or not, that you can't debate. Okay, the Mahari Rav responded to that. The Rabach, I don't know of any, maybe I missed it in the Mahari Rav's words. I don't know if it's a response to this. The Rabach makes this point. This is a good point. What do they want? They want to give malchus to these forced converts. So when does malchus exempt you from kares? If it's malchus midiraisa. So midiraisa, you have 2 punishments, 2 possible punishments. Malchus or kares. You get the malchus, you don't get the kares. But there were no witnesses. There was no warning. You need hasra, you need testimony. We don't have any of that. You're just giving malchus. That's malchus midirabanan. That can't even exempt you from kares. You're going to give them malchus, it's not even going to help them. That's a good, I don't know. That's a pretty good point, pretty strong point. Mahari Rav made another point though. He made an argument. So how are we going to get smicha back when Mashiach comes? You need to have a Sanhedrin. So who's going to give the smicha then? So ela what? The Rambam's idea that we can all agree and give smicha to somebody. So the Rabach says like this, and the Radbaz, you can see it in the Radbaz on the side of the Radbaz was living at that time. And he answered the Rabach. He said, I agree with you against the Mahari Rav. And in his commentary on Mishnah Torah, on Hilchos Malachim, so he says, Hilchos Sanhedrin, he says, no, wait a minute. Eliyahu is coming before Mashiach. Eliyahu has smicha. So boom, that's where we get smicha back from. Eliyahu will bring the smicha. It's no problem. What's the kasha? I don't even understand the question. Eliyahu is going to come. So if you look at Surah 7, I'm not even going to read it now, inside, but the Rambam himself says at the end of Mishnah Torah, he says, is Eliyahu going to come before Mashiach? Is Eliyahu going to come after Mashiach? He basically says, I don't know. No one really knows. We could try to interpret the psukim, but it could be Eliyahu will come before, and maybe that's how we'll, and so says the Radbaz, and maybe that's how we'll get smicha back. So I just want to make 2 more points. Number 1 is there have been attempts since then. So that didn't work. The Mahari Rav at smicha, the Beis Yosef at smicha. Some people say the reason we follow Shulchan Aruch is because Beis Yosef, Rav Yosef Kara had smicha. They gave to a few more people. Supposedly, it ended with the Reb Chaim Vital. He was the last person, from what I've read, to have smicha, that chain of smicha. But so what happened in the 1880s and really culminated in 1948? The Jews returned to Eretz Yisrael. So in the, let's say, the 20s and the 30s and then the 40s and the 50s, there was a lot of talk of, let's renew the smicha. So there were all sorts of controversies and articles written, and the Brisker Rav got furious, very upset about it. Rabbi Menachem Kasher, the author of Torah Shlema, he was opposed to it. So 2004, I don't know if any of you remember this, there was a Sanhedrin that was set up in Eretz Yisrael. They actually set up a Sanhedrin. They have a website, or they used to have a website for the Sanhedrin. And they said, we're the placeholder Sanhedrin for when the real rabbis come. But they issued a few press releases, a few controversial things, and kind of petered out. So one of the rabbis associated with this Sanhedrin was Rav Yisrael Ariel, the head of the Mechon HaMikdash, a temple institute in the Old City. And he published a 1,000-page book on smicha, in which he argued, he says, first of all, the Rambam is a minority in that he holds you need smicha from someone with smicha. There has to be a chain of smicha. He doesn't believe that's true. He believes any bezdin can give smicha. That's what he says Rashi holds and others. Okay. I'm not convinced, but be that as it may. So he talks about the machlokas between the Mahri Beirav and the Ralbach, which I think, based on what we learned this summer, is a completely different picture than what we've gathered. He sees the Ralbach as someone arrogantly opposing this innocent Mahri Beirav who was just following the Rambam. And the Ralbach is suddenly starting fights. Who starts fights with rabbis? And Mahri Beirav was doing him a favor. He sent him a smicha. And the Ralbach is suddenly yelling at him and saying nasty things to him. So the picture I got when I learned through the sources, and that we've discussed this summer, is that this was a heated time in history. And the rabbis were constantly arguing with each other heatedly, especially the Mahari Beirav, who had this habit of going head first and not caring what anybody else said. If you remember the child bride from Tripoli, right? Tripoli in Lebanon, she got married, and then the rabbis in Egypt took testimony and concluded she was never really married originally, and they allowed her to remarry and have kids. And the Mahari Beirav went to her husband and said, your kids are all mamzerim, you must leave the house immediately, and I will resolve everything. And you know what? The rabbis, the Maharam al-Ashkar and the Radbaz, were not so happy with that. And then there was a whole fiasco, and Mahari Beirav went to Yerushalayim and tried to work the Ralbach. The Ralbach tried to work with him, turned it into a whole fiasco, and the Mahari Beirav started yelling at him and getting very upset with him. And the Ralbach himself was embarrassed about the fiasco. And then we had the other case where, if you remember, there were two teenagers in Egypt, and the boy, when the father was still in shul, the boy gave the girl kiddushin, and there were witnesses who saw it, and the Mahari Beirav said, Paskin, that no, that never happened, and she can remarry, based on the testimony of her second husband, which the Maharam al-Ashkar and the Ralbach said, you can't do that. You can't do that. So the Mahari Beirav, he Paskin based on the information he had, the best information he had available. But he was getting involved in this machlokas, and they started throwing, who do you think you are, kinds of arguments back and forth. This was a heated time. The rabbis were coming in, and each one was great, and they were trying to establish a new order after the Jews were expelled from Spain, and it was a heated time. So I'm not going to say anybody's innocent and anybody's guilty, but to say the Ralbach was a bad guy in this episode is a little bit too far. He calls him an apikoros. How could I even say? I don't understand how anyone could say such a thing. So be that as it may. So what do we talk about this summer? So I appreciate everybody who schlepped through this and allowed me to explore this interesting, fascinating time period in history. Some of the machloksim, the halachas, and the big personalities. It's interesting to me because most of this is lost in the Beis Yosef, because these were his contemporaries, and a lot of this happened after he published the Beis Yosef. And most achronim look to the Beis Yosef to find out what people were saying, so that they miss a lot of these tshuvas. So a lot of this stuff is not so well known. I mean, I'm not the only one who's looked at these farms. I'm not pretending that. But it's much of the halachic literature missed some of this. The Shach, the Taz, they didn't necessarily have access to all of this. So this is a look to halacha that is not very common. So thank you for allowing me to go through this. And I found a lot of, my last point, I found a lot of this resonates to today, where you have different communities living next to each other, different minhagim, different postgame, and a little bit of friction among the rabbis, to put it mildly. And a lot of it is just 500 years ago, they had the same exact thing happening. And people going back to Eretz Yisrael, reestablishing, resetting it, looking for the future for Mashiach to come, it resonates a lot with me. And I see a lot here that can be applied to today. So thank you very much. Again, thank you to Moshe and to everybody. And I wish you a ksiva v'chasima tova as we enter the new year.